Hi there. Thank you for joining me in my presentation. I'm going to be talking about unraveling neurodevelopmental disorders. My name is Dr. Kevin Johnson. A little bit more about me. I'm a pediatric and family chiropractor here at the Center for Health Human Potential. I have a focus on the nervous system and chronic health challenges. I'm also what's considered a Focus Academy doctor, and that gave me advanced certification in neurodevelopmental disorders. We as chiropractors have this weird, crazy belief that humans are designed to be healthy, not sick. And that comes from this philosophy approach, the philosophical approach of salutogenesis. Saluto meaning life, and genesis meaning creation of, and it's a Latin root. And we focus on factors that support human health and well-being rather than factors that cause disease. When I give presentations like this, I like to start with Fatima's story. Fatima came to our office with a diagnosis of nonverbal autism. At our office, we don't focus on the diagnosis of a child. We just want to see the greatest potential for that individual. And when Fatima came to our office, she was nonverbal, like I said. And after her very first gentle adjustment of her neck, she popped up off the table and looked at her parents and said the word happy. Her parents were blown away by this. And it wasn't until about 4 weeks after care, Fatima started talking more sentences, about 4 or 5 words here and there. But we totally forgot she had this diagnosis of nonverbal autism. Because, like I said, we don't look at the diagnosis of each individual. But we saw this Yelp review, and it just blew us away. And still to this day, it gives me chills just thinking about it. So in this presentation, I'm going to be talking about a lot of facts. I just want to let you know that everything that's in the presentation is from peer-reviewed articles, journals, other research articles, and if it's my opinion, I'm going to let you know what it is. And when you signed up through Eventbrite, you subscribe to an email list, and you'll be receiving a series of emails that are going to be coming to you shortly after. So I want to talk about my story, like why am I here, why did I decide to do this? Well, this is my little brother Carlos. He's not so little anymore, you can see over there. But he was brought into my family. We adopted him. You can see in this top photo here, he's just laying on the floor. He's a little distressed, and he had a lot going on. He was diagnosed with bipolar, possible diagnosis of schizophrenia, mood swings, you name it. He had severe behavioral challenges. And it wasn't until I got into chiropractic college that I realized I can do something more than this. And when I was in school, we actually flew my brother up into my school so I can take care of him. Because there I realized I can do something more for him. And when he came up to my school, we had to take x-rays. He came in and we took his x-rays. And when we were talking to the x-ray tech, they're just like, you have to rule out, make sure he doesn't have shortened muscles because how far forward his neck was. He was standing like this, and his head was this far forward, and he was also kinked to the side. So they couldn't give me, they're telling me, rule out, oh, he has shortened muscles of his neck, there's something going on. And to me, I was like, no, he just has a lot going on. We need to check his neck. So after care, he would come in, he would be adjusted 3 times a week, and then he would go home. And my parents, they would tell me, they're like, what did you do to Carlos? And I'm like, what do you mean what I do to Carlos? And they would tell me that when he got home after he was seeing me for a week, that he was well behaved. He wasn't fighting them anymore. He wasn't arguing with them anymore. He was just so responsive and just so polite and just so willing to do everything they asked. And to me, I was just blown away, but I knew what I can do, and I knew what chiropractic can do for him. So even the better part now is when I move back home, he'll come up to me, he's like, Kevin, can you please check me? I don't feel good. And to me, it was really great that he had this self-awareness of his body now, that he knew something was going on. He wasn't saying, oh, can you do this for me? He was asking for a specific adjustment. He's like, can you come take care of me? Can you check me, please? So to me, it was really empowering that my little brother was able to do that now. And I also worked in a preschool and a K-1-2 class that dealt with, I was in a autism-specific classroom. And there, I was taking care of the kids as an instructional assistant. I wasn't working as a chiropractor at that point. I knew what chiropractic can do for these individuals, but I wasn't able to implement it. It wasn't until later on I would realize, like, hey, like, I really got to figure this out and have to do it. And this is how I ended up here at the Center for Health and Human Potential, taking care of that same specific population. It just happened to be, like, I don't believe there's no accident. I don't believe there's accidents in life. Everything happens for a reason. There's a reason why when I was in elementary school, my mom worked in the special ed classes, that I would go there, and there was a certain group of kids that just gravitated toward me. And I would just wanted to be with those kids and just, like, hang out with them, just have fun with them, because to me, they were just another individual. Like, they're just another kid that wanted to play. So that's really what my focus is, just like, they're an individual. Like, there's nothing different about them. But obviously, there's certain things that happen and certain diagnoses that take place, but I don't see the diagnoses. I just see beautiful kids running around all the time. So we're going to talk about what's going on currently in our current situation, why it's happening, and then most importantly, what's next. So here, in 1970, we had 1 in 10,000 kids were diagnosed with autism. And this study is actually back in 2014, where 1 in 50 kids were diagnosed with autism. Those rates are actually increased now. It's 1 in 36 kids and 1 in 27 boys are diagnosed with autism. And then Dr. Thomas Insel of the National Institute of Mental Health, he said, the burden of proof is upon anybody who feels that there is not a real increase here in the number of kids affected. You can ask the teachers. They see something that's going on. Now, there's a common belief that there's actually no real rise in autism. There's just better diagnoses, better diagnostic grouping, earlier diagnosis, but genetics don't change that fast. So there's 2 studies done by the University of Stanford and the University of Norway, and they looked at this 1,000% increase in autism. And both studies are only able to attribute that 50% of that 1,000% increase was genetic, or better diagnosis or diagnostic groupings. The other 50% they attributed was the environment. Now, I know a lot of you are going to believe that the environment now compared to 50 years ago is a lot more toxic. So then we have 6.4 million kids, or 4 to 17-year-olds, have been diagnosed with ADHD. And then OCD is now thought to affect as many of 2 to 3% of children. Doesn't seem like a big number, but when you actually take the numbers, it's 2.2 million children are diagnosed with this chronic health challenge of OCD. And then 1 in 8 or 9 million have an anxiety disorder. And then 43% or 32 million have at least 1 of 20 health chronic conditions. If you add in obesity and neurodevelopmental challenges, that number jumps up to 54%. I don't believe that it's this rise in autism or this rise in anxiety or this rise in OCD. I just see it as we have a very disconnected society nowadays. So let's break this down a little bit. So how do mechanical systems work? What do you need to have this car to work? You're going to need your parts and power. So you need your tires, you need your oil, you need your engine, you need all of that working. Obviously, some cars do drive themselves now. We have those Teslas out there that are driving themselves. But we need the information. We need that driver to make the vehicle go. And then same with the computer systems. We need parts, power, and information. We need the power supply, we need the battery, we need the keyboard, we need the individual keys, we need the touchpad or the mouse, we need the screen, we need all the parts, and we need the power. We also need the information, so the programming that's inside the laptops or your phone or any other mechanical or computer system that you may have. And then, what do living systems need to work properly? Same thing, parts, power, and information. We have all our parts. We have our fingers, our hands, our knees, our shoulders, our elbows, our head. And then we have our power. The power comes from our food, it comes from our exercise, it comes from the oxygen, it comes from movement, it comes from all those things. And then the information. The information is coming from the nervous system. And then we have a lot more parts doctors. We have eye doctors, nose doctors, ear doctors, toe doctors. We have all different sorts of types of parts doctors. We also have power doctors. The power doctors are actually increased in number due to the demand from the public. The public wants more and more power doctors, and that's going to be like your naturopaths, your acupuncturists, your holistic practitioners. And then we have information doctors. This is where we step in as chiropractors. We deal with the information because the information is coming from the nervous system up into the body, the nervous system for the body. And then because systems are made of parts, they're all designed to eventually break down. Sadly, hate to break it to you that you're not going to live forever. Everyone perishes eventually. And then what happens if you change the parts, power information for a plant? Say we have a plant in the back of the room that never sees any light, doesn't get watered, doesn't get any nurturing. What's going to happen to that plant? It's going to wilt and probably eventually die. And then what happens if you take away or disturb the parts, power information for a human being? Same thing. We're eventually going to break down. We're going to have different symptoms that present. Now, a lot of people believe that symptoms can be a bad thing or they can be a good thing. Symptoms are a perfect expression of our parts, power, and information, cause and effect. If I toss this remote in the air, if I'm not living in a vacuum, gravity works. So let's test that. All right, gravity works. It's cause and effect. What goes up must come down. So when we have symptoms, we don't like them because they don't feel good. They're not necessarily bad because it's telling us that there's something going on and that we need to fix something. So here we have the neurodevelopmental quadrangle. This was developed by Dr. Paul Hardy from the autism world, and we're going to look at this as a whole body disorder. So we have our four major systems of our body. We have the nervous system, immune system, detoxification system, and the GI system. We also have the genetics right in the center, because genetics are important, and there are ways to address that. There are specialists who deal with genetics. So we're going to take the nervous system's at the top because it actually coordinates the rest of the systems. So what we're going to do, we're going to take this more toxic environment that we have, possible malnutrition, and we're going to take the individual's genetic profile through the health of each of those systems at their current position, and we're going to start getting these different symptoms. And based on symptoms and different presentations, it's going to lead to different diagnoses. And then typically where a lot of people start is here. We start with the diagnosis. But we like to look at, what if we take and limit the environment? Maybe remove some of the toxins, increase nutrition. And then by taking care of the body and improve the rest of these systems, child's health is only going to go up. So we're going to take this genetic or environmentally induced predisposition. It's shown out there that children who grow up on farms actually have a higher increased rate of autism. So we're going to take this individual's genetic profile, and then we're going to talk about the microbiome. The microbiome is the buildup of our good and bad bacteria. Our good bacteria actually make up 90% of our serotonin in our body. That's our happy, feel-good hormone. So our gut is designed to break down our food and remove toxins and eliminate them. So we also have our tight junctions in our stomach. So microbiome depletion is caused by multiple triggers. We have our C-sections, which is related to the child not going through the birth canal of the mother, where it's first exposed to another microbiome. And then we also have antibiotics. Antibiotics aren't good for the microbiome because it kills both good and bad bacteria. We have acetaminophen, which is often prescribed early and often for children. Inability to breastfeed, and again, that's the same thing, not getting a microbiome from a mother. And then a hypersympathetic response, which we'll touch a little bit more. So like I said, we have these tight junctions in the stomach, and when the microbiome is depleted, we actually lose those tight junctions, and it's actually going to lead to a condition called leaky gut. And that's actually one of the only diagnoses that it actually is said to be what it is, a leaky gut. Like I said, the stomach's meant to break down things and remove the bad toxins. Now we have these loose, tight junctions now, so things are just actually getting through. And when they get through, they're going to go into the body and they're going to cause lots of inflammation, because the body's response to any perceived danger or invader is to provide inflammation, so the body knows where to send the white blood cells to go fight it, other responses. The inflammation is the key indicator that something needs to go there. So when that's prolonged over and over with breakfast, lunch, and dinner 7 days a week, we get this big cascade effect of inflammation, which is actually going to lead to brain inflammation. When we have this chronic inflammation state in the body, it's actually going to break down the blood-brain barrier that's in or for the brain. And that's going to lead to autoimmune reactions, immune hypersensitivity, allergies, brain inflammation, and multiple pathogens. Now this is pretty heavy stuff, I know. It doesn't make you feel very good. But there is a way out, and you can start by changing the diet. You can look into the specific carb diet or the GAPS diet. Each of those diets actually clean up the micro, or actually help promote the good promote the microbiome and the good bacteria, because bad bacteria are just like us. They want to reproduce, and then they're like bullies. When the good bacteria is gone, the bad bacteria just take over and just reproduce more and more. So then what's next? Where does health come from? It comes from proper nutrition, movement, proper sleeping, you name it. So I'm going to make this cake. I know some people are bakers out there. Some people like to enjoy baked goods. So I'm going to have my bowl. I'm going to drop my eggs in there. I'm not going to crack the shells, just going to drop the eggs in there. I'm going to put some milk in there, throw a little bit of chocolate, put my frosting in, put it in the oven for 40 minutes, take it out, dump the flour, and mix it up, and serve my cake. Not many would want that cake, would you? Yeah, I missed something. I didn't follow the recipe. And we as humans, we've missed this wonderful recipe we have that takes us from this little tadpole-looking thing to a human in 9 months. And that recipe is the nervous system. And then the nervous system is made up of the spinal cord and the brain. And the spinal cord is connected to the brain via the brain stem. And then the brain and the spinal cord are actually covered by these meninges, which is kind of like a balloon that allows the nervous system to remove nutrient or be provided with nutrients and remove any harmful toxins. And then this nervous system is covered by bone. Why do you think it is like that? Well, it's covered by bone because it's a very important system, and it needs to be protected. So what is the role of the nervous system? The nervous system at any given time is processing 11 trillion bits of information. It kind of acts like a sponge. It absorbs everything and it filters things. Could you imagine living your life if someone is scratching this wall every second of the day and that's all you could hear? You have all this information going in and out of your head all the time and you can't focus. That's a lot of these kids, that's what they're dealing with. They can't filter any of this out. They're just constantly in this stressed response and they're just breaking down and they're doing the best they can. And this is our spinal cord here in the center, our vertebral artery, and this is our vertebral column. So, sensory integration, we have our ocular system, our vestibular system, our auditory system, and our proprioceptive system. I can cover my ears and can't hear anything. I can close my eyes, cover my eyes, can't see anything, and I can also and then the proprioceptive system is the only system that doesn't turn off. Now, imagine that you're laying in your bed, you're nice and cozy, you're having a wonderful dream, and then you just start to roll more and more, and you get to this edge of the bed, and then you suddenly wake up, but you don't fall off the bed. that happened because your proprioceptive system kicked in. And like I said, that's the only system that doesn't turn off. And that allows us to coordinate, and we need the proprioceptive system to develop and grow. So we have these two terms, neuroplasticity and disafferentation. Disafferentation is an imbalance of sensory information into the brain. So it's like saying that we're going to distort the information getting to the brain. Now when those messages are distorted, do you think the input's going to be different outward? I believe so. We have neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity pretty much means that our brain can be better the next day through movement, through other activities. Our brain's constantly learning and relearning. So here's Troy. I have this Avengers Lego set right here that Troy actually bought with his own money. Troy's a 10-year-old who's seen here in the office, and we have a Lego Creation Center here at the Resource Center. And I was asked to ask some of my kids that I see to build Lego sets build Legos so we can present them at the Lego Creation Center. And I asked Troy, I was like, oh, would you want to do that for me? Because when his mom's getting checked and adjusted, he goes and plays with the Legos. And he said, yeah, I'll do it. That day when I asked him to do it, he actually asked his mom, can we go to the store? I want to buy a Lego set and I want to build it. And he's like, I will pay you back. Mind you, he's 10 years old and he wanted to do this. So here's me and Troy, and then here's Troy and his mom. The look she had on her face when she was telling me this story, she was so proud that her son wanted to give back, because she asked him, why do you want to do this? And he's like, it's my turn to give back. It's my turn to donate something to someone else. As we all are smiling in these photos, Troy actually wasn't the day they brought this to me. On the way here, Troy was holding the ship in his hands, and the ride was a little bumpy. And as you can tell with Legos, they eventually fall apart unless they're craggled together. A lot of you will get that Lego movie reference. And it was breaking and it was falling apart, and he was devastated. Mom came in and she told me, I don't know if Troy's going to come in. He's sitting in the car right now. He had a Lego creation set he brought for you, and it was falling apart in his hands, and he couldn't put it back together. He was so upset and so distraught, and he was just melting down in the car, and he wasn't being able to pull himself together. And she told me, I don't know if he's going to come in. And I told her, it's okay. We have those moments where not everything goes the way we want. Not 15 minutes later, Troy walks in with it completed. He didn't have the instructions. He didn't have the YouTube videos to show him how to do it. He just had to put these pieces back together with his memory. And just his mind was so brilliant to be able to do this all on his own. And what his mom shared with me, she said, 2-3 months ago, he never got out of the car. It would probably been in more pieces. But he's been able to self-regulate more. And he was able to put back together this amazing ship that he has for the center here. So here's a simple rudimentary reflex test. I'm pretty sure a lot of you have this done, where they take the hammer, whack your knee, and you kick. Pretty rudimentary. It's not going to tell us a whole lot, but it does give us some information. But our nervous system has lots of reflexes. So we have our autonomic nervous system, or our automatic nervous system. There's two parts. We have our sympathetic, or our fight or flight response, and then our parasympathetic, which is our resting, healing, digesting, and repair response. When we're in our parasympathetic, or resting, healing, digesting response, nice and calm, things are going smoothly. But now imagine that there's a tiger sitting in the back of your room. Say that tiger's really hungry. What's going to happen to your heart rate? It's going to start to increase. You're going to start sweating. You're going to start preparing to either fight, flight, or sometimes freeze. So that's a normal response for the body to do that when there's perceived danger. What's not normal is for when that perceived danger is gone, to be stuck in that fight or flight response. We need to come back into that resting, healing, digesting response. And a lot of people are stuck in that response, even adults and a lot of kids. Could you imagine some of these kids that walk around all the time who've had chronic fight or flight response or this, and they're just stuck here. And do you think their outlook on life is going to be safe? Or do you think they're just going to be looking at the world scanning for danger all the time if they're stuck in that response? So like I said, we're supposed to go back into that resting, healing, digesting response. And then here's some signs that you have an autonomic imbalance. So we have this very high sympathetic or fight or flight response where you're going to have anxiety, PTSD, manic episodes, irritability, focus and ADHD, diarrhea, IBS, poor sleep, insomnia, excessive sweating, and neurodevelopmental disorders. And then signs that you're low parasympathetic because you can't live in this high sympathetic response. It's very energy demanding. So we're going to eventually break down. This is where we see a lot of moms and dads at because they take care of these kids, and it's a challenge. We understand that. And then we have a low parasympathetic. We're going to see depression, mood issues, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, hormone issues, thyroid problems, adrenal fatigue, immunocompromised, brain fog, memory loss, and other autoimmune diseases. So here's a story about Emilio. Emilio came to our office with a diagnosis of autism. They're from Tijuana, and his family is ready for this commitment. Emilio came into our office having a bowel movement once every 10 days. So they were coming over 3 times a week, getting checked, and after about a week or two, Emilio started to go to the restroom more frequently. And after his adjustments, they would go home and he would have diarrhea, vomiting, and just everything was just coming out. But his parents came to our office, they weren't freaking out. They knew this was a good thing because he had all these bad toxins in his body that needed to be removed. And his body was purging that. His body was starting to heal itself. Emilio still comes into our office today. He's doing a lot better. And he and his whole family are getting checked. They see the value in getting his son, or getting all themselves checked. So what's next? We like to say it takes a village. We understand that other providers are needed, and we believe that chiropractic is foundational. So where's this disconnect? That's what we're asking. Like, where is this happening? Why is this happening? And what's leading to a lot of that is vertebral subluxation, which is a misalignment of the spinal column, which negatively affects nerve function. And it most often occurs in the top of the neck. And the reason why that is for its very unique anatomy that has a lot of range of motion, allows us to do everything. And it's also more susceptible to stress because of that. So here's a story about Brett. Brett has both autism and epilepsy. He was having multiple seizures a day, and after his first week, his seizure activity dropped 95%. And then here's my little buddy Ethan. Ethan came into our office, not very verbal. His parents, they reported that whenever they would remove a preferred item, he would have a really big tantrum. There was a day that he was in speech, and his mom relayed the message to me that he was in speech, and he actually said the word more. She was ecstatic. You should have seen her face when she realized her son said the word more. And then she also reported that now when they remove a preferred item, there's no real tantruming. He just gets up and goes where they need to go. So he's now regulating himself a lot better. So we have where structure affects function. So we have autonomic imbalance, decreased blood flow to the brain, increased inflammation, cerebrospinal fluid alterations, and mechanical and spinal cord tension. So here's a study talking about subluxation and disafferentation. So that's telling us that when these misalignments of the vertebral column are present, there actually is that disafferentation where the sensory information getting to the brain is distorted. And then also functional pathological processes take place, and neuroplastic changes take place both following increased and decreased sensory input. And then here's a study talking about how an adjustment of the neck actually brings us into that resting, healing, digesting response. And then we have these studies here talking about subluxation and the autonomic balance. And again, that's how our nervous system is balanced, our autonomic nervous system. So healthy autonomic nervous system balance after correction of vertebral subluxation. And that's determined by HRV. And there's 33,000 studies, peer-reviewed articles, and journals that talk about HRV. And that's actually how we measure autonomic imbalance in our office. We're determining your heart rate, the beats, or your heart rate, sweat gland activity, and your skin temperature all at the same time. And that's going to tell us how your body is balanced. So here's Sydney. Sydney came into our office, was diagnosed with ADHD, and she was on medication and not thriving. At school, she was having a lot of focus issues, and the teachers were actually pushing the mom to medicate her. And mom didn't want to do that. She actually came to one of these talks, and Sydney came in, she started receiving her care, and then Mr. Penguin here was actually given to the child who had the best behavior for the week. And there was a proud moment when Sydney was able to bring Mr. Penguin into the office, and Mr. Penguin's also subluxation free. This is my little buddy Bilal. He came to the office, and we actually had to lock the front door. He was just running around trying to escape everywhere, and he was just in a lot of distress. And just now he's starting to come to the office. He's actually laying on the table. He's receiving his adjustments on the table. And his mom reported to me about 2 weeks ago that she was able to take him to the zoo. She said when she went to the zoo, he was responding to everything. He was very well behaved. He wasn't running away. He stayed near her the whole time. Could you imagine how great that mom felt that she was able to do that with her son? And then just last week they went to last week they went to SeaWorld, and she was able to do the same thing, that he just had a great time at SeaWorld. And then this is a visual representation of a stressed nervous system. We have these lines here. You can see we have different earlobe heights. We have one shoulder that's higher than the other. We have a winging of the scapula here. And then right here on this side of the yellow line that you might be able to see is where his spine's supposed to be. Or his spine is over here, but it's supposed to be on this yellow line. And the pelvis is twisted. So like I said, this is a visual representation of a stressed nervous system. This is Brett here again. And you can see he has this head tilt. And then this is Brett a few months after care. That head tilt's now gone, and he's, like I said, he's 95% seizure free. And then this is Chris. Chris came into our office with a diagnosis of cerebral palsy. When he first came into our office, he wasn't walking. He had to be carried into the office. And this is a few weeks after care. Just look at his head position.
Hey,
not a lot of head control.
Good job, buddy. Good job.
He has a lot of assistance from the back.
Look at you go. Good job.
I can feel his legs
Yeah.
strong,
Yeah.
and his steps are.
His head position's getting so much better. He's
Yeah. And now
Good
he's happy because
job.
working.
Not a lot of
He
total
just
body
start to
control.
Cry or getting tired.
Yeah.
So
Nice.
now
Very good.
it's not tired.
And this is about a month after that video.
Wow.
Notice he doesn't have glasses anymore. He doesn't need them anymore. A lot more head control.
Amazing.
And he looks so much happier too, huh? This is easy.
He also came in, he had a lot of digestive issues. He was always bloated, a lot of distension of his stomach.
Wow.
He had a lot of stomach pains.
Muy bien.
And this is a few months later. Taking a lot more steps on his own.
Hey, Chris.
Doesn't need a lot of guidance from the back anymore. taking his own steps. He's not being propelled.
Look at that, buddy. You're doing amazing. Good job. Yay!
Like I said, we don't look at the diagnosis of a child. We just see the potential that they can make. It doesn't matter the diagnosis you have. You just treat the nervous system. You treat all the other systems. Everyone wins. So in our office, we also do thermography scans. The studies here are telling us that values can be used as a standard in assessment of the sympathetic nerve system or nerve function, and the degree of asymmetry is a quantifiable indicator of dysfunction. So pretty much what that's telling us is that when a body is in stress and we have these sympathetic response or this fight or flight response, the body can't actually regulate the skin temperature from side to side. So that's where these scans are showing us. So in reference, red is bad. And then on this scan here, this is actually Hector's scan. Hector came into our office with tantruming 90% of the day. He actually bit his mom on this visit, and we weren't able to complete a full scan because he was in that much distress. And this is Hector 2 months after care. We were able to do a full scan, and after his first adjustment, his tantrum rate actually decreased to 10% of the day. And then, like I said, here's a comparison top to bottom. This was his very first scan, and this was 2 months later. A lot of that heat stress, or a lot of the heat on the top of his neck was actually now gone. And then this is talking about how the chiropractic adjustment actually affects regional cerebral glucose metabolism related to sympathetic relaxation. But what that is saying is that after an adjustment, we're able to perform the same activity with less energy. So we're more efficient. And this study here is talking about how adjustments of the neck change our brain, and actually it removes us from our reptilian brain, which is our cerebellum, into the prefrontal cortex. That's more of our planning part of the brain. And then there's also studies being done by the osteopathic profession talking about misalignments of the upper neck, how they can affect neurocompromise and or may contribute to cerebral spinal fluid flow obstruction as well as blood supply. So they're actually using functional MRI to see this, and they do pre-adjustment MRIs and then post-adjustment MRIs. And they actually see that after an adjustment, the return of cerebral spinal fluid to the brain. And this is Elliot here. Elliot came into our office and he was having 10 to 20 seizures a day, and he's actually now 5 months seizure free. This photo was taken when he was 4 months seizure free. Just about a week ago, he's now 5 months seizure free. And parents are also reporting that he's talking a lot more. He's a chatterbox. He has more imaginative play. He's running around at the parks, playing with other kids. So a lot of great growth and development for Elliot there. So what causes these vertebral subluxations? It's going to be stress. We have our physical, chemical, and mental stresses. And then so we have birth trauma. So 1,000 infants were looked at in the first month of life, and 80% were found to have this vertebral misalignment of the upper neck. And here's another study talking about 1,250 infants who were evaluated in the first 5 days of life. 90% had suffered birth trauma and strains of the neck and cranium, and 10% had severe trauma. And we like to say that some of those 10% are lucky. And the reason we say that is because they usually present with that head tilt, and they're actually looked at. And then this doctor here was talking about how the birth process, even under optimal controlled conditions, is potentially a traumatic, crippling event for a fetus. Spinal cord and brainstem injuries often occur during the process of birth, but frequently escape diagnosis. And we know that they're escaping diagnosis because no one's looking for these things. This doctor here in Germany is talking about what he believes to have found that chiropractors have known for 100 years is this subluxation, but he called it Kiss syndrome. And he's talking about how these delicate upper cervical structures undergo considerable stress during delivery. Most of the sensory proprioceptive signals originate from the craniocervical junction, and any obstacle impeding these afferent signals will have many more extensive consequences in the developing nervous system, which depends on appropriate stimuli to organize itself. And he's saying primary risk factors for developing the Kiss syndrome are long labor and rapid delivery. So a lot of times babies can be stuck, just hitting the cervix over and over, getting stuck. C-sections, there's some times where the babies are pulled a little harder or they're vacuumed out. And then extraction with a vacuum. Twins or triplets, because a lot more crowded space, different positions that the babies are in. And then prenatal positional anomalies. So depending on where the baby lays, if the baby's not moving a lot and the baby's just stuck in one position. So when we talk about chiropractic, we have what we believe are side benefits, as chiropractic doesn't have side effects. So this is an objective physiological changes associated with health benefits of chiropractic adjustments in asymptomatic subjects. So asymptomatic subjects meaning individuals who came to the office with no symptoms. And what they saw was that there was improvements in autonomic function, endocrine function, cardiovascular function, immune function, muscle strength, athletic ability, heart rate variability, range of motion, respiration, reaction time, neurocognitive functions, information processing, visual acuity, stress, reproductive hormones, recovery time, general health of senior citizens, and reduced labor times. So we often hear, what does a session look like? We decided to meet the children where they're at, or meet an individual where they're at, not to have them meet our needs. So sometimes we'll have to adjust a child on mom or dad's lap, on stuffed animals, on the tables, because not every kid's going to jump on the table right away. Like my little buddy Bilal, just about maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, he started getting on the table, but it started with him being adjusted on mom or dad's lap, or adjusted at the fish tank, or adjusted on stuffed animals, and that's how we started. We started on the stuffed animal, and I was like, hey, maybe we can move the stuffed animal up to the table, and then we moved the stuffed animal up to the table, and he laid on that, and then the next time we removed it, and then he was laying on the table, and now he just lays on the table. My little buddy Ethan, he just jumps up on the table. His parents say, he's like, he feels so comfortable here, he feels so safe. Yeah, he does feel safe. We want to make him feel safe. And he feels good afterwards. And he just jumps up right on the table, gets his adjustment, I get my hug, and he's on his way. So here's a video of Cynthia talking about her son Nicholas.
It's been really cool. Since my son Nick has been going to Dr. Steve, we've seen a lot of improvement in him. A lot through his speech. His vocabulary has grown vastly. He's using a lot more words. I'm able to have more conversations with him. He's on the autism spectrum, and so it's been a while since I never really expected to be able to have such good conversations with him, but now he's expressing himself, and I really get to see his personality shine through a lot more, so it's been really a blessing. Even like when he's running and playing, I can see he has more control over his body. We're just seeing so much improvement in all areas of his life. At school, they've been really impressed in the last few months. He's been growing so much, been able to be more focused, and be able to just be more successful.
How you doing?
Be more successful in school altogether.
Good job. Look at his extra hand. Yeah. Where's mom? Look, come here. Let's see. There she is. Yes. You're silly. You're silly. You want to say hi to the camera? Hi. Hi.
So what she was saying there was that she's able to have conversations with a son she never expected to have. He has increased focus at school. He's more expressive in his language and his feelings. So when we give talks like this, we believe the whole family unit is deserved to get this checked. Because if you're just coming for neck pain, back pain, you're missing the point. There's chiropractic is so much more than that. It's kind of like going to the bank to rob it and you just take the pens. You missed a lot of stuff. So when we give talks like this, we like to offer our initial exam, which is normally $265 for $150 for an individual. or $250 for an entire family unit. And typically, when children come in that are a little more, have a lot more challenges going on, we typically see an individual for two times a week for about 4 to 6 months, and then you decrease in frequency as we graduate into a different form of care at that point. And what we're actually doing now, just because of what's happening with this pandemic that we're in right now, we're actually offering that individual rate for $75 and a family rate for $150. And what we're actually doing with those proceeds, we're actually doing a donation where we can go buy groceries, we can go buy diapers, we can go buy toilet paper, buy other supplies for families that are in need. You know, everyone's going through a hard time right now, and we want to be there to support people. And like I said, we're offering that for $75 for an individual and $150 for a family. I'm going to make that offer good until March 25th. You have until 6 p.m. March 25th to contact us at the office. You can like the Facebook pages we have, and you can contact us through there to set up an appointment for you and your family. And we're only going to make that offer good until the 25th, because a lot of times people say, oh, like, I'll just do it tomorrow, or I'll do it next week, or I need to talk to my spouse about it. And a lot of times that tomorrow never comes. And we realize that the people that we can help the most are the ones who make a commitment, and the ones who show up. That's when we can do the most to help people. And then commonly we get the questions, do we take insurance? We are not in network with any insurances. A lot of people do realize that some of their insurances have out-of-network coverage where you'll be reimbursed directly. We can provide the super bill at the end of each month for you or as needed, and you can get that reimbursement from your insurance. People ask us, how long is this going to take? Like I said, when someone's on that type of care plan, it's going to be about 2 times a week for 4 to 6 months, and then you're going to decrease into once a week for a few more, or for a certain amount of weeks, and then once every week as we maintain our adjustments. And then typically families, when they're in a care plan, they're spending between $250 to $450 a month. And again, thank you for watching this video. I appreciate it, and I hope everyone's doing well and staying safe. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me at the Center for Health and Human Potential. And thank you very much. Have a great day. Bye.